Hello and welcome to the David Icke Videocast. And I've been to Los Angeles and Hollywood many times since the 1990s. And I've spoken to insiders and to victims of the Hollywood cesspit, because that's what it is. And while the revelations about Harvey Weinstein are appalling and gathering by the hour, it seems, what has come out about him in terms of Hollywood in general is the tip of the tip of the tip of the tip ad infinitum of the iceberg. And what is emerging now is about the exploitation of women in Hollywood, whereby you do this or you don't get the part. The old casting couch technique and then some. And two things I would say about that. One, this guy has obviously been doing it year after year after year after year after year. And it's clearly, as with the Jimmy Savile situation in Britain, it's clear that lots of people knew about it, but either kept quiet to protect their career, their fame and fortune, or took payoffs to keep quiet about it. And that has a quite obvious consequence. It keeps happening. And you know, if we are going to do something about the state of this world, then we have to start doing what is right and not what is necessarily right for us in the moment. Because that's how these people get away with it. And the other point that comes out of this, having spoken to so many people over the years and written about the real background to Tinseltown, the Cesspit, is that not only is the revelatory exposure of Harvey Weinstein the tip of the iceberg, and all those other tips in terms of the abuse of women, the depth of depravity in Hollywood goes much, much, much deeper into that cesspit. It goes into the realms of paedophilia on an industrial scale and Satanism. And indeed, in so many ways, Satanism and paedophilia are the very foundation on which Hollywood is built. And we need to put this into a much wider context, because the dots connect and connect and connect and connect out of Hollywood into everything else. An industry that is founded on paedophilia and Satanism and the extraordinary scale of abuse of power is one of the biggest perception programming operations on planet Earth. And the mentality that I'm talking about that runs it is orchestrating the perception deceptions that come out of Hollywood in the form of movies and television programs that influence massively the perceptions of the global population. Wherever I go, all over the world, doesn't matter what the culture is, there's the Hollywood movies, there's the American TV programs coming out of Hollywood. And most people, and it will be globally, most people, even get their perceptions of history and historical events, not from the facts, but from the Hollywood movie distortion of the facts. The impact on the perceptions of people of that small area of real estate in California is fundamental. But you then look at the internet giants in Northern California, Silicon Valley, the Googles and the Facebooks, and you look at the mainstream media in terms of the corporations that own it. Very few, and getting fewer. And then you start to see that Hollywood and what comes out of it. Google, Facebook, and the suppression becoming more and more blatant of information the establishment doesn't want people to see. And the legendary bias and manipulation of information by the mainstream media. All those elements that dictate what you see and what you don't see, what you're told and what you're not told, are all ultimately controlled by the same web, the same people, the same network. Now, ponder on that in terms of the power that gives these staggeringly few people over human perception of everything, self, reality, world events. And then let's take it one step further and ask what perception is. Perception is everything. Perception decides what you think of yourself, what you think of the world, what you will support, what you won't support, what you will challenge, what you won't challenge, what you will do and what you won't do, who you will like, who you won't like. Perception is everything. All human behavior comes out of perception. And here we have a tiny few, and getting tinier, few people who have control of the information which in effect decides those perceptions. We have seen this week again with the Project Veritas operation in the United States, which has done some great work exposing the manipulation and collusion of the media in dictating the narrative they want people to believe. And this week we've had the exposure through hidden cameras of people who, like at the New York Times, which is for some reason leading the exposure of Harvey Weinstein, having, according to a former New York Times journalist, suppressed information about Weinstein years ago, So obviously he's upset somebody. But the Project Veritas revelations um, showed someone from the New York Times talking about the outward um, bias and the systematic bias of that newspaper. Well, we knew about that. But crucially, um, Project Veritas exposed the collusion between the New York Times and YouTube, and how YouTube is, again, systematically dictating what you see and what you don't see by manipulating what is highlighted and what is not. And what they are highlighting are what they call mainstream sources. That's what they want people to believe. And what they are suppressing and not highlighting are alternative opinions and alternative sources of information that challenge the official narrative on everything. This is the world we are living in. I've been exposing it for 30 years, but now it's coming to the surface where more and more people can actually see it. So let's have a look here at the mentality that runs not only Hollywood, but the whole system. But let's focus this on Hollywood here. A number of very brave former child actors have come out and exposed the paedophilia that totally infests Hollywood. And as I've been writing all these years, the whole system, including politics, especially politics. And this is a former child actor, Elijah Wood, who said that child actors were preyed upon in Hollywood. There is a darkness in the underbelly. If you can imagine it, it's probably happened, he said. He talked about a lot of vipers in this industry. When people read my books, they'll see he's talking actually literally. He may not be himself, but he actually is. He said the entire Hollywood industry is run by a powerful paedophile ring protected by the politically powerful right at the top in Washington, D.C. Now, again, I've been writing about this for decades. It's a global ring, and they have a network of the ring in Hollywood. They have a network of the ring in Washington, in Westminster, and so it goes on. This is how it works. So this man, Elijah Wood, is absolutely right from his own experience, unfortunately. He also said, again quite rightly, that what is going on in Hollywood is on the scale of the Jimmy Savile scandal, the so-called BBC entertainer who was exposed as a record-breaking paedophile after he died in 2011. But what has never been pointed out, certainly in the mainstream, is that he was a procurer of children for the rich and famous, which is how he was protected for so long. But the scale of the Jimmy Savile scandal, well, of course, because as I've just said, the Hollywood ring, paedophile ring, is an expression in that area of the global ring. And the Savile ring was an expression in Britain of the global ring. And Satanism and paedophilia rings are actually expressions of each other. They're interconnected. Child actor Corey Feldman said that he and his friends were surrounded by paedophiles who were everywhere like vultures. He blamed the death of his best friend, child actor Corey Haim, through drink and drugs, on his abuse as a child. in Hollywood. Corey Feldman talked of a Hollywood mogul who was head of a circle of older men who surround themselves with young children. He said, I can tell you that the number one problem in Hollywood was, is, and always will be paedophilia. Yes, plus Satanism. Yes, the literal sacrificing of people and animals and children. John Robertson, he worked behind the scenes in Hollywood for 16 years on feature films and television projects with major studios. And he has since also exposed the paedophiles and the Satanists that run the place. He talks about a global satanic ring, and this is again the same one that I've been exposing since the 1990s, which operates in every country because it's global. Robertson said there was paedophilia running rampant in Hollywood, with child sex rings involving the upper echelons of Hollywood, executive VPs of development, producers, mega power agents, and the international bankers that fund all this stuff. He's absolutely right. This is the ring. Satanism goes into banking, it goes into corporations, it goes into social services, why so many children are stolen from loving parents. It goes into politics big time. It goes into Hollywood, goes into the media. This is the mentality that's running our world, ladies and gentlemen. Robertson described how children are drugged and filmed at paedophile parties involving bloodletting and animal dismemberment. All the things I've been told about again and again by all the people that I've talked to over all the years. He also confirmed another common theme. This is something else that's very important to highlight. How politicians and those of use to this elite that calls itself an elite, they're compromised by being secretly filmed in these situations. As Robertson said, once they've got the goods on you on video, they own you. And through that, so many political decisions are being made all over the world as a result of compromised politicians doing what they're told to do or else. And let no one think that's here and there, now and again, a bit rare. No. It's central to how the world's run. And so horrible and horrific as the revelations about Weinstein are, they really, really, truly are the tip of 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 the iceberg. And there's another elephant in the living room, which people don't talk about because they're frightened to. If they do, their careers are over, but almost certainly fundamentally damaged. And it's the same principle as why these actors and actresses and producers and directors who knew all about Weinstein and what he was doing decade after decade said nothing, because they fear the consequences. And this elephant in the living room is that Hollywood is owned and totally controlled by Zionists and by American Israeli dual citizens. Oh, that's racist. No, it's a freaking fact. A fact that's been acknowledged by the Hollywood press, by Jewish journalists in Hollywood, by Israeli newspapers, even been kind of celebrated. Yeah, we own Hollywood. That's not to say that all Jewish people own Hollywood. No. All people that believe in Zionism own Hollywood. No. It means that a cabal of them do. And then, and don't take my word for it, check it out. Check who created and owns Google, which owns YouTube. Check who runs Facebook. Check the major owners of the major media corporations. And then ponder on how much power over our perceptions by control of what we see and don't see is in the hands of a tiny, tiny few people, ultimately working as one unit. And we're going to another stage here now, and that's the use of the Anti-Defamation League, the ADL, to further censor what we see and don't see. Now, the Anti-Defamation League, like all these Zionist Israel censor groups, is an inversion of what it claims to be. The Anti-Defamation League goes about its business by defaming its targets. That's its modus operandi. And the ADL and these other Israeli apologists groups and professional censors are also going on and on and on and on about hate speech, hate this, hate, anti-hate, when they're hate groups, in the sense that they set out to try to get the public to hate their targets. That's their modus operandi, like defaming them. So these Zionist hate groups who seek to use the claim of hate speech to silence people, what they are is a protection racket, protecting Israel and not the race, the political philosophy and ideology of Zionism from legitimate investigation, questioning, and exposure. If I talked about a Hollywood being controlled and owned, as it provably factually is, by Chinese people, wouldn't be a problem. Oh, really? Why so many Chinese people running Hollywood? South African people? Oh no, what's going on? Why so many people from South Africa running Hollywood? But say they are American Israeli dual citizens, and it's, oh, you can't say that. Why? Why, when it's true, and acknowledged to be true? This is what all the actors and actresses are terrified of even talking about. The same way they were terrified of talking about Weinstein. Do you know one of the, Weinstein's obviously a Zionist, but there's a guy called Arnon Milcham, who was apparently been involved in 130 movies and a big name in Hollywood. He was an arms dealer and an Israeli spy, and his company worked with a secret operation in Israel, obviously connected to Mossad, its military intelligence arm, to gather together technology and materials for the Israeli nuclear program. You know, the nuclear program that they won't talk about and America doesn't ask about, nor Britain or any of these other people that demand about Iran's nuclear program and North Korea's nuclear program. What about Israel's nuclear program? Oh, no, we don't think about that. What is that? What is this special treatment that a sliver of land with a population of 8 million people in a global population of 7.5 billion, why did they get this special treatment? Why do we have a situation where there are laws passed to punish those that make the choice to boycott Israel economically in protest at the apartheid state that is imposed on the Palestinians? What if there was some effort to boycott China? Problem? No. Ooh, no. South Africa? No. Anywhere else virtually? Ooh, no. Israel? Ooh, pass some laws, you can't do that. And how come we have a definition of anti-Semitism, which is actually a complete misnomer, as I keep saying, because Semitic refers to a group of languages in the Middle East which are almost in their entirety Arabic. But so we have this definition of anti-Semitism which includes people saying that Jewish people, or Zionists, as I prefer to call them, because it's not racial, this is about ideology, that they control things like Hollywood, for instance, which is provable fact, widely accepted, because it can't be denied. Why is there a definition of anti-Semitism that says it's racist if you expose that, when it's being acknowledged by the Israeli press? Why is it not a problem, like I say, to say, if that was the case, that Chinese people control Hollywood, or Russian people control Hollywood? Wouldn't be a problem. But for one small group, apparently it's racist to expose what is provably true. And just as people need to get off their knees in terms of exposing people like Weinstein, they need to get off their knees in terms of not being censored from exposing fact because of intimidation. And we need to do it if we want freedom in this world. As I was going on to say, the hate group, the ADL, its chief executive, Jonathan Greenblatt, has revealed that they are establishing a new censorship center. My term, not his, but it's the truth. And he's never one to exaggerate, Greenblatt, when he said that the alleged growth of anti-Semitism in the United States is akin to that of Nazi Germany. He wasn't exaggerating, of course. But he was special assistant to Barack Obama. And what's being set up is a state-of-the-art command center in Silicon Valley to monitor everything online that the ADL decides is hate. And the definition of hate in this context is anything that ADL decides is hate, and anything basically that criticizes Israel in any way that is effective. And this network is being seed funded by the Omidyar network of eBay founder Pierre Omidyar. Greenblatt says that this censorship center in Silicon Valley will write reports, compile data, and provide insights to government and policymakers. The center will use the best-in-class technology to provide insights to governments and policymakers. And if you pass that through the Orwellian translation unit, you get to tell people that information and opinion that they can and cannot circulate. So this is what we are facing. And we need to look it in the eye, because we are allowing an extraordinarily few people to dominate and dictate what we can see and what we can't see. And, you know, there was a classic example of this, absolutely ludicrous example, but then it is. When you may remember a little while ago, the Al Jazeera Arabic TV network used hidden cameras to expose a member of the Israeli embassy in London, talking to people within different political parties, including the Labour Party, through the Friends of Israel networks and others that are all connected into the same web. And he was caught on camera pressing for the takedown of a government minister, Alan Duncan, because of his views on Israel, Palestine, etc. And they were caught with their trousers down, basically. He said it, and other things that showed the scale of, well, actually, just a little bit of the scale of manipulation of British politics, massively the same, and then some in America. And it was a great piece of journalism in the public interest. What these hate groups did in Britain was then complain to Ofcom, the media regulator in Britain, that it was anti-Semitic. See, this is the protection racket I'm talking about. When you're exposed for what you're actually doing, provable fact, out of your own mouth, then throw anti-Semitism and shut them up. Well, to their enormous credit, and I have great reservations about Ofcom in many, many ways, but to their enormous credit, Ofcom rightly said, this is not anti-Semitic. It's actually in the public interest. And in effect, it was journalism. You know that technique, that profession called journalism? Anyone remember that in the mainstream? But this is the level to which they descend, to use racism to silence legitimate questioning, legitimate investigation, and legitimate exposure. And you know what sickens me? Sickens me beyond belief is the way that these hate groups, these Zionist hate groups and censors, exploit the way that Jewish people suffered in Nazi Germany, and others suffered in Nazi Germany, by the way, exploit that suffering to promote a political agenda of censorship and so much more today for their own ends. If there's a definition of disgusting more potent than that, then I have never heard it. And what happens, as with Weinstein in Hollywood, is that people are intimidated and frightened into not talking about these things because they fear their career with Weinstein, their career, they fear they fear being called racist or anti-Semitic in this other case. Well, some of us don't do intimidation, and some of us won't be silenced by it. And I say to these hate groups seeking to censor people, these Zionist hate groups, not just in Britain but around the world, some of us won't be intimidated by you because we think you're pathetic. And the game is changing, as you're about to see.